The Food and Drug Administration said this week it's banning the use of red dye number 3. I think we just can't have red things. That was what the red dye was, the dye that was taken out of M&Ms and stuff when I was a little kid. But it's a synthetic dye that gives food and drinks their bright red cherry color, but has been linked to cancer in animals. And since we too are animals, we decided to bring on an expert in early cancer detection to talk to us about this. Sumit Rai is our guest. Sumit, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, what can you tell us about this dye and why it needs to be banned?
So, these dyes are carcinogenic, which means they cause cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they cause cancer is they cause cellular damage. And when cells get damaged, they get mutated and they replicate those mutated cells. And that's the form of the tumor. That's how cancer starts. And so the problem with a lot of this today is there are just too many products and additives that are approved to go into food. And the exposure is very high. I mean, recently, Brigham Buhler, who's the founder of Waste to Well, the largest medicine practice in the country, had a great point on the Tucker Carlson show. So he was talking about, how many additives we have in the thousands, whereas in Europe, there's only 700 that are approved. I mean, today, the FDA approved 3,000 additives as what is known as GRAS, GRAS, which is generally recognized as food.
Is there anything we can do about that, though? I mean, why is there so? Are they doing no testing? What's the issue?
I don't think they're doing enough testing. I mean, there was a similar issue a few months ago with acne products, where they found that, the active ingredient in household names, if you start thinking about Estee Lauder Clinique, Target Up and Up, Clearasil, is benzoyl peroxide to reduce acne. And benzoyl peroxide is not heat stable. They tested it in some independent labs, and they found that benzoyl peroxide, because it's not heat stable, turns into benzene. So highly toxic known carcinogen. So toxic that the accepted limits are 1 to 4 parts per million. These products off the shelf were generating several hundred to several thousand parts per million. And so you're correct. There is not adequate testing, and there are too many additives that are allowed today in synthetics that cause all kinds of problems.
How do we get to that point, though? You talk about benzoyl peroxide. That's been around since I was a teenager. So it's been around that, but since that I heard about it, why is this stuff just coming up now?
I think it's a good question. It's not clear to me why it's coming up now. I think that we're not using government resources appropriately to really make an impact on consumer health. I think resources are redirected for political means. As an example, recently there was this entire thing about alcohol that the Current Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, brought up as being a big problem. I don't believe it's a big problem for causing cancer. No one's debating that alcohol can cause cancer, but the way that he made it seem, which I believe was an attention grab because he's about to leave office, is essentially that it's going to be a huge problem. There's 600,000 cancer deaths in the United States annually. Only 20,000 of them are alcohol-related, 3% of the problem. It doesn't address 97% of the problem. So I think in a similar vein, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so is this red dye cancer not as big a problem as we're being led to believe?
Red dye cancer is a problem, but it's one additive of several thousand that are also problems. And so it's really about, how do we more systemically address that? How do we figure out how to make better choices? How do we figure out which of these are acceptable, not acceptable at more scale? There are many additives in food today that can cause cancer that are just not adequately studied and not informed for the American public.
What do we do about that right now? I mean, we've got all these products. I mean, they talk about the things that's in cereal, it's in candy, cherries and fruit cocktails, strawberry flavored milkshakes, all this kind of stuff. And it's all out there and it's on the shelves today. What happens with all this stuff, and what can we do to stem the flow of any potential problem?
Two things. One, limit intake. So no one's saying don't have a bowl of cereal once in a while or have a candy bar, but limit intake. I think, dose is important. You have a packet of Skittles one day, you're not going to develop cancer, very unlikely. But if you're consuming it on a routine basis and you're accumulating that toxicity and damage into your body over years and years and years, then you are going to create a problem potentially. Second thing is because we have had all this damage accumulated over so many years, people need to get screened. And that's why, in our company, we developed this test at Cancer Tech Labs so people can get screened to potentially detect stage zero cancer for 200 types of tumors.
Jeez.
There's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
All solid tumors share a certain mechanism. It's very simple. All tumors must shed to spread.
Mm-hmm.
And when tumors are born, whether it's lung, breast, colorectal, pancreatic, liver, bladder, prostate, whatever the case might be, they have to spread, and they spread these circulating tumor cells into the bloodstream. And so what we do is we extract them from a blood sample because the presence or absence of them is indicative of cancer. Healthy blood does not have those cells.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find those cells in the bloodstream, there's an underlying problem. There's a tumor from which they were shed because it needs a source and origin. And that's why it covers so many different solid tumors, types and subtypes.
Well, now, but you don't need to do that like every time you eat a bowl of Fruit Loops, you don't need to run to the doctor. You need to have symptoms and stuff. You're not trying to, scare people into getting this test every time they eat a colored food, are you?
I certainly don't think you need to have a test after every meal. Certainly not.
Yeah.
But I do think routine screening is important, and you want to get there when it's pre-symptomatic.
Yeah.
I mean, look at something like pancreatic cancer. That's a great example. Pancreatic cancer is typically considered a death sentence. Pancreatic cancer is not a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Stage 4 pancreatic cancer is probably a death sentence. Stage 1 pancreatic cancer is curable. You just certainly won't find it because it's asymptomatic.
Mm-hmm.
No symptoms early on. Right? There's no easy screen or easy diagnostic. And so, but if you could find it, which occasionally happens on accident, they'll be doing a procedure in an adjacent organ like the liver, they'll notice an abnormality on the pancreas, biopsy it, and they'll confirm, oh, we found cancer. When that happens, survival rates at stage 1 are high. That's broken into 1A and 1B. At 1B, survival is 85%.
So what I really hear you saying is that it's less about the dyes and more about consumption and more about screening.
Correct.
That's it.
The consumption of these harmful additives and just get yourself screened at some regular frequency, and it's certainly not every time you have a meal.
So it's not the actual panic that we're being led to believe. We got to run against the break here, Sumit Rai. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on, an expert in early cancer detection about the red dye ban. Some helpful information there. We appreciate you talking to us.